two, one. All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening to all of you who are joining in on this live webinar right now. A big welcome to all of you to this fourth webinar in the series of webinars conducted by the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing on a very timely topic, I believe, a pressing issue that we seem to have found ourselves entangled with, and that is COVID-19. Now, today's session will be on the lines of how it's time to transform the service sector into the digital era. Now, we're joined by two notable figures in this industry, and they'll be taking you through some of the key points, highlighting on how best you and your business, your services, and how you can make use of available resources and technology in giving the best to the people. Before I introduce to you the speakers for this session, let me give you a quick overview of what the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing is all about, which in fact needs no introduction whatsoever. The Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing is Sri Lanka's centerpiece for marketers in the country. Ever since 1970, when it was founded, it has consistently thrived to better the profession of marketing in Sri Lanka. Now, this decade, 2020, has been off to quite a start, and COVID-19 has taken the world by storm, and it has affected many lives and many people within just the course of these 4, 5, 6 months, and essentially the socio-economic sphere in the world. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, it goes without saying that just as much as the global community, global economy may probably make its way toward a slump, its effects will in fact spread to Sri Lanka as well. So in these trying times, the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing, as a national body for marketing, has realized the importance and vitality and the necessity of the digital age. Questions such as whether it's possible to convert the service sector into a digitalized sector, and how best can we make use of these current circumstances to better the services offered by businesses if COVID-19 is to in fact persist, will be a few pointers that we'll be looking into during our discussion today. So let me now introduce our speakers for this session. We have Mr. Rakhil Fernando, Managing Director and Country Head for Sri Lanka at Daraz.lk. And joining him would be Mr. Mevan Peiris, Forbes 30 Under 30 in Asia, Head of Operations at PickMe Food and Advisory Council Member at the Global Shapers Community. Good evening to you both, gentlemen.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hi, Tirna. Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining with us this evening. So we have quite an audience joining in slowly. So we'll straight away get into the discussion, and we'll see how it goes. We'll have just to give you a quick rundown of what's going to happen. For a while, we'll be going through a few questions, and we'll discuss over how what's with regards to this topic in hand. And at the end of which, we'll be going through a small Q&A session put forward by our viewers, our audience. So for starters, I'd like to start off with Mr. Rakhil Fernando. Now, Mr. Fernando, it's quite apparent and it's quite obvious that Daraz actually took the e-commerce industry by storm, and people are now in a place that they're actually switching to Daraz over Amazon or eBay, and it certainly is convenient for most people in Sri Lanka to actually stick to Daraz.lk. So my question to you is quite simple, it's quite straightforward. What is the impact of COVID-19 on the e-commerce industry, and how has it impacted so far?
For Daraz, I hope you guys can hear me clearly. So there has been a significant impact for us as a business during this last couple of months. During the curfew period, it really disrupted our service a lot. So there was a significant demand that was present, and a lot of people. There was a big trend towards people starting to shop online, and converting a lot of people who never shopped online before. But Daraz being an island-wide delivery service, it was very difficult for us to operate during the curfew period. So we had to restrict essentially orders and really turn away customers. We went from around 15,000 orders a day to 200. So the business really ground to a halt during the first couple of weeks of the curfew. Then during I think the government also started to accommodate and realize that people needed essential items to their homes and things like that, and we started to work through the problems and managed to create a slightly wider delivery network for the island. But at the end of the day, during the curfew period, it was an incredibly difficult time. Even though there was a huge pent-up demand for people wanting to order things to their home. However, as the curfew was lifted, it's a different story. The business has gone into overdrive in the last month. We are seeing a 50% growth from what we had before the curfew in the business already. And we're struggling now to keep up with the demand in terms of we're hiring aggressively, getting more capacity on the board, needing more riders, setting up more hubs, just because we've seen a huge shift in the shopping behavior of consumers in the country. The conversion rates and the type of demographic of the customer who's shopping on the platform in itself has really changed and widened. So, demographics that we particularly never targeted before the pandemic are now an entirely new segment for us to attract. So in that sense, we've seen the business really open up for ourselves and really had to reforecast our entire year's projections. During the first 4 weeks of the curfew, we really thought that financially it was going to be a write-off, because we cut down our targets, and we really looked at it as a way of just trying to mitigate the problem here. But now that everything is opened up, we're looking at it again and really seeing a huge promising year in front of us. So it's exciting in the sense of it is the silver lining in this very horrible period. But I think it's a good thing for Sri Lanka. I think digitization is always a great place for the country to head towards, and crises like this are sometimes sort of the catalyst for innovation. So we're excited, and I think consumers are speaking with their shopping behavior. They're also looking at online as a far more relatable channel to shop, not just for essentials, but for everything from computers to groceries to clothes to you name it. So we're seeing a huge growth in all our categories. So I think globally, e-commerce has seen a big leg up in terms of this entire sort of pandemic going on. So I think it's also a good sign for businesses who are also offline, correct? I mean, a platform like ours is the enabler. What we're doing is we're connecting buyers and sellers. So that doesn't mean that business should be shifting away from offline sellers. It's a platform like us allows our offline sellers to start selling online in a drop of a hat. So again, it's not that we're winning so somebody else is losing. We look at this as a huge opportunity for everyone, and so therefore we're very excited and encouraged.
All right, thanks, Mr. Fernando. And holding you on to that particular stance, and I'm sure it's quite the same for PickMe Food as well. Coming back to actually, I'm going to move on to Mr. Peiris now. Mr. Peiris, now PickMe Food was all about convenience, and it gave all of us a chance to, it's simple, it's easy, it's convenient, and it was right there for us. But now, since COVID-19, people were very reluctant to order, were very careful, especially since there were talks of the virus being, spread with the drivers, spread with the food. So as Mr. Fernando explained what COVID-19 had to do with Daraz, what was it like for PickMe Food? I'm sure it was quite different, but on the same lines, I'm sure. Could you please just elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tilda. I mean, yeah, in terms of the fundamentals, I think it's a little similar across the board, but I think our trend lines was a little different to what Rakhil just explained that he's seen on Daraz. Because for us, what happened was just the couple of weeks leading up to the lockdown, we were seeing somewhat of a gradual decline in the order counts. And then really when the lockdown happened, so we anyway knew that we'd had to kind of adapt and transform our business to be able to support. We've already seen and heard stories coming in from places like China about how entire cities, entire provinces were running only on delivery. So we knew that there's going to be an opportunity that we need to gear ourselves for. So that's what we were working for when the lockdown was announced. And actually, the first week or so, we really had no idea because, as you know, PickMe Food is a platform that relies on our merchant partners to operate. We do not stock products or operate through warehouses, but ours is more of an on-demand platform. So when all the restaurants also were closed up, we really had no idea as to how we are going to go about it. But obviously, with any situation, I mean, the team came together. We were discussing what else we could do, and one of the key things that we kind of restarted the delivery operation of was LP gas, right? Because what we thought was that if everybody is locked down and at home, you have to cook, and if you're going to cook and your gas runs out, that's going to be really troublesome for you to actually drive out, which you can't do essentially, and then also get your gas cylinder. And a lot of Sri Lankans still rely on gas cookers, even to have drinking water, right? When you take it off the tap. So that was the first initiative that we did. That weekend itself, we partnered up with Litrogas, and we said, okay, let's try it out. We've never done it before. It's going to be a huge challenge logistically because we were delivering prepared food and pizzas and burgers and the ready-to-eat meals. And now suddenly we are going to be taking on LP gas cylinders. So the key differentiator there, or the strength that we had, was that we had a large platform of drivers, or the fleet of drivers. So what we did was we knew that mobility would be hindered, and then our taxi service would be significantly curtailed. So we actually converted all of those drivers to be able to do deliveries on PickMe Food as well. So LP gas started off with Litro. 2 days later, we had Satosa volunteering up to partner with us, which was a great initiative as a state institution. And that was the delivery of essential goods, and it was a very set pack. I mean, something that you could just get through, for about 3 to 4 days, or in some cases, the week. And this was what really kept the engine oiled and kept us all going. Then very slow. So actually, we were also at the start, unlike maybe what Daraz had experienced. We were, from that point onwards, it was absolutely heavy demand, right? I think you would have remembered those initial weeks. I mean, we were just inundated with requests. Okay, can you come to this area? Why aren't you there in all 24 districts, etc. So we slowly but surely ramped up because we were very cautious about the health risk that was very prevalent, because it's not just our capabilities of taking this all island and suddenly boosting it to several thousand deliveries. It's also a very very big health risk at the time. So we did it step by step, and very soon we had more and more vendors which were under the category of essential services operating. There was vendors with fresh produce operating, and that's when we really pivoted ourselves from a food delivery platform that we were literally overnight and over a few days into a marketplace platform. Right. So that's what we were kind of focusing on in those first 2 weeks. Then obviously things started easing off. Restaurants were able to operate under special permission, and then the last 10 weeks that we've actually seen has been a gradual evolution from there onwards. So Tilda, if I was to just sum it up, if you're going to talk about the first few weeks and how this whole thing triggered off, I'd say that it was really gas and then the Satosa partnership that kind of kicked us off. slowly easing into essential goods. And then, of course, we are now back at our full capacities with prepared food deliveries as well.
Right. I think it's pretty obvious that as soon as COVID-19 and as soon as curfew and lockdown came into effect, it was very difficult for most people, most businesses, and especially companies like PickMe Food and Daraz and so many other companies to adapt to this new situation of curfew for so long. It was never ending, especially for highly dense and populated areas like Colombo and Gampa, where they never lifted actually curfew for a really long time. But now, since things are easing, I believe both companies are having it. It's a so slow process, I believe, but at least we're trying to get back on our feet and give the best to the people as much as possible, as conveniently as possible. Mr. Fernando, if I might come back to you, what would it be now, given the fact that there is a risk of COVID-19 persisting for quite some time, at least until a probable, a viable solution is found for COVID-19? What sort of strategies does Daraz.lk have in store to maintain this e-commerce store both in Sri Lanka and worldwide?
So for us, we've taken a lot of measures as a company over the last couple of weeks. I think one of the advantages that we have is where we're part of a global organization, Alibaba. So that really gives us a lot of insights and information and know-how that we learn from our parent company in China, which has gone through big pandemics like SARS and obviously now COVID-19, and really come out of it the other side much stronger. And with through that also, all the lessons they've learned and how to operate a business in those environments. So on a delivery standpoint, we're taking a lot of precautions when it comes to safety of our riders, which is our biggest priority, and the safety of our staff. But also the safety of our customers. So in terms of the package handling, the sanitization of the packages, the health checks that we consistently do on a daily basis of all our riders. We check their temperatures. Everybody has to sanitize the package, sanitize themselves before they start deliveries. So it's a lot of precautions and capital actually we've invested to make sure that the process is as clean and safe as possible. Now, I mean, it's impossible for us to entirely prevent this on our own. So we're trying to be as precautionary as possible. But we're also taking measures to also be prepared if this problem comes up again. Till a vaccine is discovered, we really predict that there are going to be spikes in cases from time to time. And with that could be curfews as well. So as a business, we also are taking precautionary steps there as well. So for example, Daraz currently centrally distributes a lot of our warehouse-based products from our Colombo warehouse entirely island-wide. So we're now looking at setting up micro warehouses around the country in every district to make sure that we can, because if cross inter-district travel is prevented, we can still service a district with our existing inventory in each district. So those are kind of sort of business precautions we're taking as well. So I think it's impossible for us to predict and mitigate all the problems that we foresee to happen over the, let's say, next couple of months till a vaccine, for example, is discovered. But I think right now we're far better prepared. We've gone through, I think, the worst of it in terms of the shock and the business impact. So I think everyone now is just understands how to be prepared and how to sort of get through it the next time, certain challenges do pop up.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Fernando. Now, on the same note, now, Mr. Peiris, now, when it comes to PickMe Food, since it's very food related, people value a lot about quality, and more than just anything else, they value about the quality and the safety measures taken up by all the officials at PickMe Food. Now, service excellence is one thing that customers, especially concerned with PickMe Food, is very concerned about. And during these times, I think it's of paramount importance to most people of, how PickMe Food actually goes about this. So if I'm to ask you a question, how would you elaborate service excellence in your industry, not just PickMe Food, but in the entire food industry? And also, just like Mr. Fernando mentioned, what sort of preemptive measures have you taken, especially with regards to your delivery methods, and mainly the safety precautions that PickMe Foods have actually just employed for these times?
Yeah. Thanks, Dil. I mean, as you may know, PickMe is a platform that operates on the shared economy, right? We rely on independent delivery partners who are obviously signed up with us to deliver goods, predominantly restaurant prepared meals from independent merchants to customers. So it's a platform that kind of connects these three verticals together. So as a result, we have an acute challenge in the sense that we don't actually employ all of the delivery partners that make the deliveries for PickMe Food. So there's a lot of onus on the drivers themselves, the delivery partners, to actually make that independent, empowered initiative to take the necessary precautions. But as a platform, we've obviously always been committed to maintaining and ensuring that the safety and the health concerns were addressed first, because that is the condition, so to speak, that the government actually allowed us to operate at the very inception of lockdown, literally within that first day after lockdown, because we jointly discussed a plan that we are going to execute. There was a lot of guidelines sent by the Health Promotion Bureau that PickMe also adapted. We gave in some of our own input as well. So if you look at it, I mean, one thing for the entire industry, and this is something that people always ask, see, I think we have to be very honest with ourselves as well, because this is a pandemic and a situation that none of us can have a foolproof mechanism. I've spoken about this in a previous webinar as well. I believe, there was a time that we were under the impression or the notion that Sri Lanka was a safe place to visit because we had higher temperatures, right? And we were actually going about, and at marketeers, right? We have to be really mindful. We were actually going out there and trying to promote Sri Lanka as a safe destination to visit without understanding what the pandemic held at all, right? And that obviously backfired. We had to, pull the plug on it very fast. So it's the same. It trickles down the same to anybody in this industry, right? There is still a very prevalent risk out there, as Rakhil said, till the world figures out a vaccination. Any country cannot celebrate too soon. We are already seeing what's happening with New Zealand. We are obviously hopeful that things are moving towards the positive outcome, but the risk is very real. So even in our businesses, I think it is important that we make sure that customers are made aware of this risk and take the necessary steps. So for example, at the very inception, even before lockdown was announced, what we implemented was contactless delivery, right? In our application itself, you could, put in an order note where you request for contactless delivery. And that was educated for our driver partners also to say, okay, yes, there would have been a time where the customers actually appreciate the fact that you go up to the customer and hand over the food personally. But right now, they may rather prefer it kept at the lobby of their apartment or near their front door or near the gate at a designated place. So that was implemented way at the start. Next came where we knew that there was some guidelines coming in from the Health Promotion Bureau, WHO as well. And we actually gave out a large amount of hand sanitizers to be a mandatory feature inside all of our taxis, right? Which a lot of the drivers adopted. Then even with our delivery partners, we insisted that all delivery partners must wear masks, must wear hand gloves, and should carry sanitizer at all times so that they can sanitize themselves, use sanitizer after every delivery is made, and also can sanitize the packaging that they're handing the food over to as well. So these were steps that were kind of put in, but we were very kind of honest to our customers as well to say, look, we need you to play a part in this as well. It's a multi-stakeholder game, right? We obviously need customers to be more mindful when they accept a gas cylinder when they accept a food order, you yourself need to take some precautions. And there's been a lot of kind of communications that we did at the start, where we said, if you have a doubt whether a particular packaging is clean, why don't you re-sanitize it before you take it into your home as well? Again, right? If you are not sure of a gas cylinder, why don't you make sure that when you're handling it, you use your protective gloves and so on. So it's this multi-stakeholder approach. And then again, in that same matrix, the third vertical was the merchants. I mean, the merchants really supported us from the get-go of setting up. I mean, we had some guidelines that we shared with them, and we set up a process to say that there should be demarcated areas for the delivery partners to collect it. There should be hand sanitizers and hand washing facilities at the restaurants and other vendors. And the merchants themselves, I mean, we could really see them drive this initiative, make that proactive step in making sure that any driver who comes to collect an order from them actually goes through that process. So the information is available, right? And that's what today everything is all about. It's the democratization of that information, and actually, it's a self-initiation that's really going to take us far, because a company just setting up a series of policies is not going to work at all if the stakeholders connected do not actually take it upon themselves to execute this. So these are a series of things that we've done, and of course, something that we are a little proud of that we did pretty early on, about 4 weeks ago, was actually set up this temperature display mechanism on the app. So if you look at it, every driver on the PickMe platform application, firstly, their temperature is checked, and we started that rather early on. So every time we release their curfew passes at office, a lot of the merchants themselves had temperature guns, and they were making sure that the checks were done. Now we've gone even further, where we actually display it on the app. So again, it is that information flow that we're trying to promote, not just rules and regulations, so that as a customer, you can actually see, one, the driver's temperature, and also the last time he's checked it, right? So anyway, it only lasts for, I believe it's only about 3 days that the same temperature is valid. But as a customer, you can actually ask the driver, I'm seeing that you got your temperature checked yesterday. What about today? Why don't you also get it? So it's completely a multi-stakeholder approach. And in our case, the experience or the takeaway for me is that actually people came together. There was some initial misconceptions where I think world over communities were taking it rather a little simply. But once the gravity of the pandemic was realized, from merchants to customers to our delivery partners, everybody took it really seriously and supported us in this journey.
Thank you, Mr. Peiris. I think what you just pointed out was very important, because I think at the end of the day, all of us have an equal amount of a role to play in this particular situation that we've been entangled with, because we can't always expect the other person to be careful, and all of us ourselves to just let go of the responsibility, because it's in our human nature to always put the blame on someone else. And I think what you just made was a very valid point, because, and to our audience, it's a very interesting thing to ponder upon, because each of us, all of us, have a very strong and very important role to play, especially when things like this is concerned. Not just this, but the very humanitarian aspect of this COVID-19, of this pandemic, is concerned. I think all of us have an equal and very vital role to play in containing this, in curtailing this as much as possible, even though Sri Lanka is to a certain extent curtailing it very much. And it's all to do with discipline, and like you said, it's all to do with you maintaining the same respect you have, the same respect given to you by the merchant, by the delivery guy, just as much as they offer to you. Coming back to Mr. Fernando, what I was actually wondering is, now, what drives a person to actually use Daraz.lk at a time like this? What are the measures that Daraz.lk would take to actually bring in traffic or bring in a customer base at a time like this when people are, quite reluctant to rely on things on e-commerce?
I think for us, what is really working for us right now is essentially what we've been always focused on as a business. It's just now that people are realizing us or this channel more, this channel has become more obvious or prevalent to consumers. So I think the biggest driver for Daraz as a platform and the attraction to customers is our assortment. That's primarily what we really stand out in the market. We have over 1 million SKUs on the site, and over 50,000 sellers now registered on the site selling a variety of products. We cover pretty much every category of consumer item that you can imagine. So from FMCG to electronics to fashion to lifestyle, and lifestyle covers furniture to exercise equipment to kids' toys. We have digital products like gaming vouchers and topping up your mobile phone to Netflix vouchers and any kind of digital service. Now we're also just launching our own gaming platform within Daraz itself, where people can play games, play with their friends, and earn tokens and earn vouchers on Daraz to play. So it's a platform that really covers a lot in terms of the availability and selection and available assortment. So we think that's our biggest strong point. And at the end of the day, the way we look at it is if you are looking to buy something, check on Daraz first, because that's where you can find a variety of sellers selling a similar products. You can shop, you can compare prices, and then at the end of the day, be an educated consumer before you make a purchase decision, whether it's online or offline. So that's one thing. The second thing is our network as well. We're a company that can deliver. We deliver 100% coverage of the island. So wherever you live, whether you're in a island off the coast of the north, the west coast, or whether you're in sort of the deepest parts of the south, we deliver everywhere. So in that sense, we're also a platform that has a big network, and our delivery promise is we will get the item to you. Our aim is to get it to you on average within 4 days, wherever you live in the country. Third thing is it's, at the end of the day, price is also, I think, very important. We try to always, our goal is always to be the cheapest when it comes to a product when you compare prices. So at the end of the day, we want us to be the best in terms of the bargain and the best in terms of the value for a customer. Now, when you take those three sort of let's say attributes of our platform with the current limitations of people's optionalities to shop, still a lot of brick and mortar shops are finding it difficult. They have finding it difficult to have assortment when it comes to replenishing their inventory because of current importation bans and things like that. The online channels are becoming more and more attractive. And when a platform like ours, which has a good assortment, the big network, and ideally the best price, we think we are a strong value proposition for people to choose us as a shopping channel or a shopping destination. But on top of that, we're also really looking at adding way more value-added services into our business. For example, last week, we just launched utility payments. So you can pay your electricity bill or your water bill on Daraz, on the platform, on the app, or on the website. Soon we'll be adding many other kind of bill payment optionalities within the platform as well. Then I just mentioned the gaming element of the business. It's called Daraz Plus Games. So with that, we're launching a separate gaming platform within Daraz, where we have, I think, currently around 150 to 200 games, games that are popular and everyone knows, that we've licensed, and you can play with your friends or against your friends. and winners get vouchers and tokens that you can use to buy things on Daraz. So there's actually really a monetary advantage of the entertainment side of our business. Then we're also launching new payment mechanisms as well. In the next 6 months, we'll be launching our own co-branded credit card. We're currently exploring launching our own mobile wallet as well and financial services. So we as a platform want to be this sort of holistic solution to really offer customers a one-stop destination, or to have the best assortment of what you want to buy, but also the functionality and the entertainment side of things that also make it attractive and as a destination in itself. So I think with all those attributes, we're sort of an attractive value proposition, as I said earlier. And that's sort of working out for us when it comes to the traction and the current transactions that are going on with consumer demand on our platform.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Fernando. Coming back to Mr. Peiris now, during COVID-19 or before COVID-19, payments and the transfer of funds were quite a significant part of delivery and food delivery online. So especially with the pandemic coming into place and with the hardships faced by PickMe Food and also the customers and the merchants, could you just tell us a bit about this mechanism that PickMe Foods actually just carried out, the transfer of funds, whether customers were always given the opportunity or the option to just stick to debit or credit card payments, or was cash on delivery an option at the start, or was it scrapped off at the end, or what was it like? How was the transfer of funds? How did it take place from the customer to the driver to the merchant? Could you just elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, Tirna. So actually at the start, one of the core fundamentals of contactless delivery is also that you avoid cash, right? So that's I think an obvious feature of contactless delivery, and cash notes, as anyway, right? I mean, we even tell our kids that you shouldn't you should always wash your hands after you use cash notes, because that is a definite carrier of germs anyway, because it's used so widely. So at the initial phase, when we started operation during lockdown, we actually insisted that we do not accept cash on delivery, because there were a couple of things. One, there was a health concern relating to that. Two, there was also the risk in terms of fraudulent activity happening. Sometimes customers not actually having cash at home to hand it over, and we felt that the operation needed to be also managed in a certain way. So as a result, at the start, even though the platform's key feature is cash on delivery, we insisted that customers use their debit or credit card only to actually make the payments, and that worked out really well. It was really appreciated by a lot of the consumers. It was appreciated by a lot of the drivers, because on one side, people always ask us, why can't you switch on cash on delivery? You have to think about the customer, and you have to kind of give us that option. And my answer is yes, most definitely. But especially at that stage, just imagine the first week of April, right? Just put your memory back when this risk was so prevalent. If we had actually, gone ahead with that option, just imagine the risk we are putting to the driver, right? We are kind of forcing the driver to accept cash notes, which can probably carry, germs and even the virus. So I think we felt it was our responsibility that even though it may curtail some of the demand, that even though it may curtail some of the transactions, that we insist on contactless delivery at the start, right? So this went on for quite a few weeks. There was growing kind of demand and requests from customers to switch cash on demand back on. As you know, in Sri Lanka, there is still a large portion of people who do not always use their credit cards. A lot of people who have credit cards but don't trust it on online platforms. I'm sure Rakhil is quite aware of that kind of percentage. So after a while, it was after some very thought out process that we actually, after quite some time, we decided that we will reopen cash on delivery, and that was also with the advice from the authorities as well. So for us, I mean, there's a business aspect, there's also a health aspect. and that's why we had to take that decision. In terms of our payments to our drivers and our merchants, Tirina, I mean, everything has always been virtual payments. They always happen in real time. There are e-wallets that the driver and both the merchant has, which gets updated as soon as the transaction is done, and they have the ability of transferring that into their bank account at any given time. So that is the, I mean, that is the beauty of the application. So there is no delayed transactions. There are no kind of cash flow issues that the merchants have to face, and that's I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of the restaurants came on the PickMe Food platform first, the minute that they could restart their operations, even before they started their dining, which is all still curtailed, and even before they started their takeaway or their own deliveries. PickMe was definitely a safer and a more secure way for them to operate, because they will have no cash flow issues. All of the orders are paid to them instantly, and they don't have to worry about customer non-responses of customers, or no shows, or customers refusing to pay. So that's in a summary, that's what our payment network looks like. And what I wanted to highlight more is that decision needed to be made at the start because of those reasons that I just mentioned.
Mr. Peiris, to follow up on this, now all this time we were just focused on the customers, what PickMe Food had to do for the customers to come on board, and what actually got them to think again, okay, what's driving me to go back to my phone and order PickMe Food? What's that like? But what was it like for PickMe Food to get the drivers back on board? Because I'm sure just as much as the customers were really worried and concerned about what was going on with regards to COVID-19, the drivers themselves would have been quite reluctant at the start to actually go back to work, to stick to delivery. But what was it like at the start, and what was the measures taken by PickMe? What was the course of action taken by PickMe Food to actually get back the fleet of drivers who were essentially the essence of PickMe Food delivery? What was it like?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in a sense, again, I go back to reminding everybody that we operate in the gig economy, right? These are all gig workers. They are all, in simple terms, they're daily wage earners, but they're also workers who earn as they work. So on one sense, it's not actually a discretionary decision that we had. Every single day that we had our platform closed, those drivers that rely on that platform, the families that depend on that source of income, did not have an income. So we were acutely aware of that, and that is why we were working so hard to restart our operations, because as a business, I guess there was a possibility for us to kind of re-evaluate, maybe take a week off, take a few weeks off, reassess, see how we are going to recalibrate ourselves and adapt, and then make a value proposition with a lot of thought and care. But the simple fact remains, this is a multi-stakeholder business, right? We have a large number of drivers and delivery partners who are completely dependent on our platform, and we believe that we have a responsibility to those delivery partners. So that is why we started literally with just 1 day. I think it was just 1 day that we had the entire platform completely closed, and we started as soon as we could. And really, again, I think it's a beautiful story. It just seems a little weird that I'm highlighting it, because obviously it's the work that we do. But to me personally, it's been really rewarding hearing some great stories coming from the drivers. There have been lots of drivers who have reached out to me personally and to all of our staff members in saying that, at this point of time, that they're very, very appreciative that we restarted under difficult circumstances, because that was the only way they could make sure that there was food on the table, right? But now, having said that, in this circumstance, there was also the big risk of the health contamination issue and the possibility of people getting the virus. So as a result, this was a balancing act, and that is why we stressed upon the drivers and the delivery partners to adhere to these policies and to say that, look, we're doing this in your best interest. It is a must that you actually take this initiative, take all the precautions as possible. So we had already set up contact tracing, and we were even
willing to support the authorities. And we had actually supported several cases for the Colombo municipality as well in actually contact tracing, because we have all of the data. If a particular customer has used one of our vehicles, we can even trace it back to say, that particular vehicle was driven by X person, and that same vehicle has been used for hires by these 10 different people in the last week. So it's a very effective way of actually doing contact tracing, and we were supporting the government to do that at the initial stage as well. So similarly with the drivers, we were very insistent that they disclose if they have any signs of being affected by the virus, and we were continuously reminding them that as much as this opportunity is there for them to be economically kind of, for lack of a better word, survive, there is also health risk that they have to be mindful of. So yeah, I think that vertical and the fact that we had to restart in such short notice really paid off for a lot of the drivers and the delivery partners who are dependent on our platform. And I think that was a good call that we did, and I'm sure that the driver partners appreciate that move.
Thank you, Mr. Peiris. Mr. Fernando, coming back to you now, something I noticed is that as far as the topic is concerned, this digital era, or digitalization. Now we're slowly moving into that. I'm pretty sure most of us are actually in it. But now, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, there's always that rural areas where people are not integrated enough, not moving enough with technology. So let's say for a company like Daraz.lk actually, grow some, pull out some traffic from, if they are to actually spread or even, move in with the current circumstances, how would Daraz.lk go about, bringing in about people from rural areas? Because yes, delivery is done to most parts of, in fact, island-wide delivery, but what is possible to be done to integrate these people from rural areas to actually use their phone, or somehow or the other just get in touch with Daraz.lk? What sort of course of action does Daraz.lk? I mean, this is of course a long-term plan, I'm definitely sure, but what's that like, Mr. Fernando? I think Mr. Fernando is experiencing a bit of a technical difficulty.
All right, sorry, I was on mute. Sorry.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I think what I was saying is there's a very common misconception of where the demand currently exists for e-commerce in Sri Lanka. I think the conventional wisdom, people think it's predominantly Colombo and maybe the Western provinces. But in our experience, we're actually seeing a very different outcome. Over 70% of our orders come from outside the Western province, from very rural areas. And of that, over 70% of those orders are placed on our app. So it's a highly mobile-based customer who's actually not in Colombo that is driving a bulk of our traffic. So we are actually seeing a business that is actually quite healthily spread around the island already when it comes to the demand and the actual conversion of the customer. We currently now deliver around 18,000 packages a day, and most of our deliveries are in very rural areas. Okay, obviously there is a high percentage that come from Gampaha and Colombo, but we currently ship around 1,000 orders to Badiklo every day. We currently ship around 1,500 orders to like Mana and Jaffna. So there's a huge demand actually of currently of e-commerce and transactions on e-commerce coming in areas that are out of the Western province, purely because the current level of assortment and the optionalities that people have to shop in those areas are very limited. Yeah. So because of that, a platform Daraz can really take advantage of the limitations of availability outside the Western province areas and really provide consumers on what they're looking for. Now, saying that, one of the biggest challenges we had is actually getting products to those customers. Now, Daraz as a platform, like I said, we deliver island-wide, and around 70% of our deliveries are within our own fleet. So it's riders that we employ directly, and then trucks that we own ourselves, and we deliver about 70% of packages. But the remaining 30% are with third-party logistics companies. And the biggest problem in Sri Lanka is actually, it's less about the demand, more about the logistics. That's where we are facing our biggest challenge. And in terms of where we're really curtailing, the reason we curtail our growth is because we are unable to deliver to the demand we're getting. And that's because the existing logistics infrastructure in Sri Lanka is not, let's say, tuned to the service levels and the requirements of the e-commerce consumer and as well as the e-commerce seller. It's a far more demanding, let's say, process that is required. And because of that, currently the growth of e-commerce in Sri Lanka is severely curtailed because of that physical restriction. So that's where we're really investing most of our money into, actually. It's when by investing less into how to attract the rural customer, because we know the rural customer wants to shop on us. We know they come to our platform every day, but sometimes we just find it difficult to get the product to them. So we're investing heavily in our logistics infrastructure, building more warehouses, building more hubs, hiring more riders. We're actually looking at investing in 3PLs as companies, as investments, to just really, spark a fire under this entire industry of logistics and see if they can catch up to the demand that's really pent up. So I think because of sort of this scenario, I'm very excited about the future of the e-commerce in Sri Lanka. I think fixing the logistics problem is not rocket science. It's something that needs to take time, and that it's a infrastructure-based investment. And but in the long term, it's a very exciting industry to be in, and therefore we are very excited at the future, and we just see the growth of e-commerce exponentially going to increase over the next couple of years. I mean, for us, the business in itself has significantly increased in the last 12 months. Within the last 12 months, we've seen our business grow around 250%. And in the next 12 months, we project our business to grow another 300% at least, just on the month-on-month numbers we're seeing. So it's exciting time to be in. And actually, it's one of the questions I think I'm seeing here that was addressed is, can you give advices for people who plan to start a new e-commerce service? I think there's huge opportunity for e-commerce in Sri Lanka, and I think I don't just think it's the opportunity of creating an e-commerce website. It's to really create business around the entire value chain, which is whether it's logistics, whether it's seller support. Right now, there are tens of thousands of offline sellers who want to sell online, but they either don't have the bandwidth of the people to do so. There's a huge opportunity for startups to go help those sellers sell on platforms like Daraz and help them manage the online businesses for offline stores. So, e-commerce just doesn't mean setting up an e-commerce website and selling direct to the consumer. There's so many gaps in the entire value chain. The opportunities are just huge. So I'm very excited, and I think it's a very exciting industry to be in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernando. I think that actually sums up a question I actually was planning to ask you, especially as far as the e-commerce industry in the future is concerned. Just before we move on to the Q&A session, one final question from Mr. Peiris. Now, I know you explained to us as to how it has been for the customers, for the merchants, for the delivery guys, and for PickMe Foods with COVID-19, and you've explained what the process entails and what it has entailed so far. So if I'm to just nail it in the bud and just ask you one final question, briefly, could you just tell us what the short-term plan is and what the long-term plan is for PickMe Food from here, given the fact that COVID-19 might persist for some time, because we have quite an audience, and I think it's a good opportunity to get the message across to at least some of them and tell what sort of plans PickMe Food may have in the short and long term.
Yeah, so obviously in the short term, Tirina, what we are really trying to see is how we can reactivate all of the restaurants who were on our platform, but also who wanted to join our platform. In the last 3 months, we've had a huge number of restaurants that have reached out to us, that have been, not working with us before, but have seen the flexibility, the potential, and the fact that we are a local player, Sri Lankan company, has really motivated them to start work with us. So that process will continue and will continue aggressively. We want to really make sure that we give the opportunity to as many merchants as possible, be it restaurants or even merchants in the marketplace, the vendors, the ability to conduct their transactions and be present on our platform. But our focus will be obviously on the restaurant players as well, because that has been our core, and we want to kind of get back to focusing on that. Then the marketplace initiative that we started off will be continued. We probably will see some changes in the app very soon, which will make the user experience better and easier to kind of navigate the marketplace experience. And again, on that basis, we will be focusing a lot on people providing staples, essential goods, fresh produce, and the likes, because we really want to focus on the grocery part of it. Again, because we are an on-demand platform, we may not really venture into all of the million SKUs that Rakhil has on his platform, but there will be a lot of daily use household, predominantly focusing around food, but also some adjacent categories that you will see coming on platform. Taking a cue from that, another thing that is really kind of a concern and is a discussion point right now in the restaurant community is that they are finding it very difficult to operate, because obviously their dine-in sales have gone down, their walk-ins have reduced, and even as they slowly open up, they're not seeing the same traction, and they're still reeling from the economic impact that they had to kind of stomach in the last 2 to 3 months, especially during the time of curfew. So PickMe Food is really committed to working with all our partners to make sure that there is a sustainable middle ground that we work at, where both the platform and the restaurants are actually able to work with us, grow with us, and make sure that that they can really reap the benefits out of this entire arrangement. Because for us as a platform, again, going back to that whole magic word, the multi-stakeholder theory, is the fact that we need all of our restaurants to be at their best. We need them back on track. We need them thriving. We need them successful, because that is what the platform offers. We are not operating in isolation. So the short-term goal will be to really make sure that all of the restaurants that are willing to operate for delivery are on our platform, and that we service them effectively, and that we give the customers also choice. A little further away, rather in the long term, will be some expansion plans. I mean, I don't want to get into specifics, but there's obviously some expansion plans to, especially from this whole exercise, we are realizing that there are a lot more areas in Sri Lanka that we see a great potential for online ordering and transactions. And obviously, those are fellow Sri Lankans and customers who deserve to have a great experience, especially in terms of food delivery and the likes. So those are the two that I'd like to touch on. There's obviously a plethora of work that's been happening on the engineering front, but those, I mean, I'm sure that as and when you all use it on a daily basis to travel around or order your food, almost on a weekly basis, you will see some incremental changes.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Peiris. And actually, to be quite honest, most of these answers actually were most of the questions that were posted on the Q&A were answered by some of the questions that I myself had asked. What are the new PickMe services after post-COVID-19, as consumers are quite excited to see it? What is the future market potential for online or e-commerce platforms in Sri Lanka? There is one question that in fact, the question that I post on how PickMe actually encouraged drivers to come on board, that was asked. And All right. I think, Mr. Fernando, I think we have a question for you. Um, One of our audience members have asked how COVID-19 affected shopping behaviors of people.
So I mean, I can sort of, I'll specifically sort of speak to what our experience was. So, especially as soon as the curfew hit, it was, demand very much heavily weighted towards groceries and essential items. But then that it was also a function of what was allowed to be delivered. So we had to, switch off a lot of our other SKUs that we knew we couldn't deliver. So we also focused on groceries and essential items as some of the primary categories that we were focusing to convert to our consumers. And that was, I think, very encouraging because it really brought in an entirely new segment of people who shopped online on their groceries and really opened up an entirely new category for a lot of people, like even the likes of PickMe and Uber Eats, to introducing entirely new sort of product category levels to target to sell to people online. As soon as the curfew ended, though, we really saw our business shift back to normal in terms of the spread on the type of orders and the categories of orders that were on our platform. So, for example, as of yesterday, our orders are quite evenly split with the groceries, FMCG, lifestyle, electronics, and fashion. So I think, in our experience, we've really seen people get back to, I wouldn't say normal, but, try to get back to some resemblance of a normal life and, consume the things they want to consume to sort of, as they did before. But in terms of emerging areas that didn't exist before COVID that exist now, I think the grocery category is a good example. Just more and more people are now happy to shop online, order their vegetables online. For example, before COVID, the conventional thought was that I don't want to order my vegetables online because I want to touch them and see whether the quality is good. And now that, the service levels have been sort of come through in a great way with the likes of, with us producing it, but also with PickMe and Uber Eats, etc., to really satisfy the consumer and deliver a good product. And that really converts the customer and make them trust this channel. So I think if anything, the COVID pandemic has really introduced Sri Lankans to really shop online for stuff that they traditionally wouldn't have, which I think primarily was FMCG and grocery kind of products.
All right. I think that answers one of our audience members' questions on the shopping behaviors of COVID-19. Mr. Peiris, there's a question that one person had asked. How do you manage complaints, especially late deliveries, health issues in the future? How do you manage to take care of these complaints?
Yeah, actually, complaint management as a vertical, a business vertical, and a segment has also been quite challenged in the lockdown and post-COVID era, because again, what we had was during the lockdown, most call centers just couldn't function the way they did, right? So I mean, there was a lot of talk from restaurant call centers who were completely shut down, of popular restaurants. But even outsourced call centers that some of the companies were using were not functioning at their optimal capacity because there was no way to get the staff to and from work. So that was a big challenge that we had, and we were all working remotely. We had offered that possibility for our staff, and we wanted to make sure that they felt safe. So again, as a result, the numbers also, on one side you have a resource constraint. On the other side, you have a ton of people calling about different things. It might be complaints, it might be inquiries, it might be new business. So we really had a challenge at the initial phases of the lockdown to manage this. And then I must say that at one point we had to kind of really focus only on the complaints, and there were times that we took certain measures to curtail the ability to kind of service any and all inquiries coming in. But going forward, again, things are returning back to normal. Our call centers are also now slowly but surely returning back to work. They're on a roster system, obviously, and I think very soon we'll be at our fullest capacity, even the pre-COVID times. And in terms of managing complaints, one is the whole ability, the rather what I'd say, the medium through which the complaint management has to happen, which is the customer care agents, but also in terms of managing or addressing some of the concerns that customers may have. For example, classic thing about late deliveries, we have a very clear SOP and a service agreement with our customers. There is a set amount of time, depending on a restaurant, that you can expect an expected arrival time, or rather ETA. And beyond that, we actually inform the customers that we may not be able to deliver this order at this point of time. So we want to manage expectations, and I think that's the whole kind of name of the game, right? Managing everybody's expectations and making sure that the customers know exactly what they're getting in for. So that's something that we want to really do. Thankfully, there's not been any health issues per se relating to the food or any kind of contamination. But those are some things that we are always addressing and making our merchants aware, so that they proactively take steps to ensure that the food is of the highest quality and they adhere to the PHI standards laid out. But with regards to the service itself, I think the key most important thing is to manage expectations, make sure that we only do what we can do, and actually under promise and over deliver. And that's a key phrase in service excellence. And that's the only way that any company, not just PickMe, can make sure that their customers are satisfied with the service that they receive.
Thanks, Mr. Peiris. Mr. Fernando, I'd like to come back to you. There's been an interesting question, but I don't know to what extent this can actually be implemented. But the question says, why can't you merge with PickMe for delivery process?
I think part of this question probably should be answered by Mevan, because I mean we are obviously very willing to partner with anyone who's willing to deliver items. I think there are certainly let's say operational restrictions on how we operate and how, let's say, a real-time delivery service like PickMe operates that just prevents us to work together for all our categories. But I think definitely for categories like fresh food or frozen food or things like that, certain orders that people require certain urgency for delivery, I think for sure where we're looking at partnering with the likes of platforms like PickMe and others to see whether we can come through with that, at least in Colombo for now.
All right.
If I was to just pitch in there, I think collaboration is definitely something that we are open to, and you will see very, very soon. I know Rakhil and I are set for a call as well on this, I'm pretty sure. But of course, as he mentioned, I think there are some strengths in the way that Daraz or any e-commerce platform operates, particularly Daraz, in the way that they handle their logistics, the way that they handle their stocks and their inventory, which gives them an edge to effectively service or rather deliver the products or really the million SKUs that's on the platform. Now, if you ask, whether that can be done by PickMe Food, definitely not overnight, because that is not how our platform is geared. Ours is a real-time delivery service. We do not stock inventory. We are actually relying a platform that is relying on the individual merchants to kind of sell their products. So it's two distinct ways, and we are also catering to two very unique kind of use cases or customer need states. And I think there is definitely room for collaboration, which I'm sure we will explore more. But it's not something that is very obvious, because I think there is a long way to go. Sri Lanka is at its infancy. If you take real-time delivery, we're at our absolute infancy. We're just getting started. Food delivery was not present
even 2 years ago. I think it's only a very recent phenomenon. And even e-commerce, while Daraz and the likes are making strides in this space, I'm sure Rakhil would agree that there is so much more potential. So there's two long journeys, two long roads that both our companies probably need to pursue. But in the process, I think there'll be definitely some areas that we can collaborate with as well.
Thank you very much. There's also another very general question, but I'm sure which carries a unique answer to both of you. So I'd like to anyway pose the question to both of you. And this was posed by Isuru Patirana. He asks, what are the suitable promotion tools for online delivery services? I think we can start off with Mr. Fernando.
Just to clarify the question a bit, when you say suitable online tools, you mean sort of in terms of customer acquisition, or?
I suppose so.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for us, it's not particularly rocket science in terms of how we attract customers. I mean, how we as a platform really try to grow our user base or grow conversion is really converting our existing customer base. Just to sort of share insights to people on who are keen to get into this space. The reason a business like ours focuses on people transacting on our app versus our website is because at the end of the day, if somebody downloads our app, it's easier for us to send offers to them, to send promotions to them, to really target them in the sense of sending them information about what they're interested in. And it's cheaper as well, right? Because a push message doesn't cost anything. But if you're constantly targeting people on the website, you have to spend money on Facebook, on Google AdWords, on SEO. So that, those are, I think, if you look at what are the channels you use, those are the channels we use when we want to attract new customers. But when we want to convert existing customers and get people to look at all the amazing offers we have online, our CRM tools become our most effective tools. So whether it's newsletters, emails, push messages, things like that, tools like that. I hope that answers the question. I'm not particularly somebody who's entirely well versed in online marketing and stuff like that, but that's just a very sort of top line answer.
Absolutely. Mr. Peiris, there's another question for you. It says, what is the possibility of PickMe to be able to transport? What is the possibility of PickMe to be a transport provider for vegetables from rural areas to urban markets?
Right. Okay. I can see that question, and I'm assuming that he meant it's a B2B, right? Not C2B.
Yeah.
Because that would be like reverse engineering that cycle. But yes, so definitely something that can be discussed and something that we've already looked at as well. The only thing is, again, I go back to explaining right now that the way that the PickMe food platform and even our delivery arm works is that it is real time, right? So we have not seen enough of a kind of a use case to dive headfirst into kind of scheduled deliveries and route plan deliveries, etc. Immediately, because there is still a lot of potential in this real-time delivery space that we want to make sure that we exploit. So again, it's not something that is impossible, and it's not. I'm not saying that that's something that we will never do, but it really depends on whether how much of a value addition we can make in enhancing the current logistics channels that even vegetable sellers, etc., are using in order to get to places like supermarkets or the other general markets that you see in popular cities and also townships, right? So if we don't see that our technology can be leveraged and people will actually use it to create some greater efficiency, then I don't think there's any reason just to jump into it, right? So it really depends on, for example, whether, randomly, whether the Nugegore supermarket vendors are actually, one, savvy enough, but also more than savviness, are they willing to order their own fresh produce that they actually sell at the Nugegore supermarket through an application, whether it be PickMe or something else. And if that market or that consumer group is matured enough to actually be at that stage of digital utilization, then there is definitely a vacant spot or a use case for someone like PickMe or any other partner to come and actually fill that, to make sure, okay, if you're a vegetable vendor, you want your stocks to be delivered on time, use this app and deliver it. But if that is not yet there, I think probably the existing channels are working well for those vendors. So again, as I say, it really depends on the value addition we can make. And again, if anybody has an interesting business proposal, please do reach out and let's take a look.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peiris. Mr. Fernando, there are also, I think, young and budding entrepreneurs trying to start up certain things, and there's a question posed saying, can you give any advice to anyone who's planning to start a new e-commerce service?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of the question I've addressed earlier as well, in the sense that I think there are, for us, when we look at how we operate in Sri Lanka, we see huge gaps in the market when it comes to opportunities that can be filled in the entire value chain. Yeah. And like I said, participating in the e-commerce industry doesn't necessarily mean you create an online website. You can really participate and really succeed servicing the ecosystem as it stands, as it is right now. For example, I mentioned logistics as e-commerce focused logistics as one area where we see a huge opportunity. I mean, just to give you an example, if you're a startup looking at e-commerce logistics, you can be $1 million business doing $1 million in sales, just servicing Daraz and us giving you business in 12 months' time. Then there are huge opportunities in areas where you can create support businesses for offline vendors. So there are many, like I said, many offline vendors out there who want to sell online, but just don't have the bandwidth or the manpower or the knowledge to do so. And what we're looking for is to help and get people to help these guys sell online. Now, this kind of ecosystem is thriving in the US with Amazon. There are companies that help businesses sell on Amazon. And if those kind of businesses or those kind of ecosystems emerge in Sri Lanka, that's an entirely new business that didn't exist as an opportunity, yesterday. And that could be great, because you could ask those businesses to give you 5-10% of whatever they sell, and your cost of doing it is nothing. It's just simply managing the fulfillment process. Then there are many other ways. Now, I think if you do want to get specifically into e-commerce and literally start selling things online, I would focus on niches. I'll be quite honest and genuine with people that it's difficult and expensive to run a platform, a marketplace like ours with like I said, the millions in assortment, because it takes a lot of resources, a lot of capital, and a lot of time to build it. But if you focus on specific niches, I think there is that opportunity there. And for example, absolutely off the top of my head, specifically organic food or vegan food, or other areas like that. You look at a niche, you look at where there is existing market demand that is not being fulfilled, and approach it like that. But I wouldn't, if I was starting an e-commerce platform right now, I wouldn't go into a general marketplace. It's just, for us, we're a business that is relatively well funded and have a night, our team is slightly under 1,000 people, and it's still very, very difficult working environment. It's not an easy operation. So that's my advice. I hope it's
Thanks, Mr.
good advice.
It's very Very informative. I think due to time constraints, we can entertain one more question, and this next question would be to Mr. Peiris. Something that we actually missed out on also now that I see it. Is there any criteria when PickMe is selecting a food restaurant in terms of health concerns?
Yeah, Tiruna. So especially during this period, we've been a little more kind of conservative and made sure that all the checks and balances are in place. So for example, one of the basic requirements to join the platform on PickMe has always been the requirement for the restaurant to be a registered restaurant with the business registration and the necessary approvals to operate a business in the food space. We have had to make certain regulations more flexible to entertain people like home bakers and give them the opportunity. But again, it goes through a process of disclaimers, some awareness on what the merchant needs to follow in terms of health and safety so that they are in line with the general regulations that are prevalent in the country as well. So what we've really been trying to do is make sure that, again, all anyone who is interested to join on the platform, we are trying our best to facilitate that, but also within a framework, not to compromise the quality or the health and safety aspect of what we offer on the platform as well. So we've been pretty much relying. Having said that, then and the next question comes, how do you, for example, audit these places? Again, PickMe is a digital platform. We do not have the mandate nor the resources to necessarily actually run audits on these places. So we lean on the processes that are already existent, the government regulations, the PHI regulations, and their audits, and make sure that the merchants that we get on the platform adhere to them. And that is the process that we'd like to kind of approach going forward as well.
All right, thanks, Mr. Peiris. I think due to the time we have, that pretty much sums up our Q&A session as well. And it's been quite an interesting hour of a discussion. I think we've managed to touch down on a few key pointers that essentially I told at the start of the discussion that we might look into, especially as far as this, the service sector and this digitalization and COVID-19 circumstances are concerned. So I think a fair amount of our audience members were also able to question Mr. Mevan Peiris and Mr. Rakhil Fernando on a few pointers and few questions that they had as well. So a big thank you to our audience who's joining in and who's online right now watching this webinar. And also, I think that pretty much sums our discussion as well. So on behalf of the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing, I'd like to extend a very big thank you to Mr. Rakhil Fernando and Mr. Mevan Peiris for taking their time off and joining in on this webinar. It's been quite informative and it's been very helpful, especially for me personally, and also to many of the viewers and audience members that joined in on this webinar as well. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining in on this webinar. And just before we wind up, we'd like to, on behalf of Slim, we'd like to inform all the members in the audience and all our viewers that we'll be sending out a small survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you could take the time off, just fill it and send it back to the officials at Slim and the entire team at the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing for managing this webinar. So with that being said, we'll be back with you soon with another webinar session. And until then, I'd like to once again thank Mr. Mevan Peiris and Mr. Rakhil Fernando for joining in on this webinar session and for sparing the time and being with us. Certainly hoping to see all these implementations in the future, and certainly hoping for the best in the service sector, and certainly hoping for the best for the people in Sri Lanka. So that being said, it was a pleasure moderating this session on behalf of Slim. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm Thilina Udayaratna and hoping to see you once again so soon. Please take care, everyone, and have a good night.